again push Canadian unity to its absolute limit. This is the divide between the East and the West. In the West, British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, while in the East, Ontario, Quebec, the Maritimes, and Newfoundland. Since their entrance into Canada, Western provinces have found their wealth in resources, whereas Eastern Canada, primarily Quebec and Ontario, rely more on secondary industries, manufacturing, big business, and bureaucracy. This contrast in itself is not inherently bad, but a series of decisions by Ottawa, specifically targeting resource industries, has angered Western provinces and, increasingly, the people who live there. Projects shut down, taxes imposed, job killing made in Ottawa regulations that have reduced investment, collapsed production, and put the very existence of Western Canada's most important industries into doubt. These perceived attacks have led an increasing number of Western Canadians to question whether being a part of Canada is worth it at all. According to a poll conducted in 2022 by ResearchCo, a third of Albertans now say that Alberta would be better off as a separate country, a higher percentage than even Quebec. So what exactly is causing this, and how long has the problem been going on? To find out, I flew to our nation's capital to meet John Robson, a journalist and historian well-versed in the origins of Western alienation. What do you think are kind of the origin story of Western alienation in Canada?
I think there's always been some element of feeling looked down on by the East. But, you know, in the days of Sir John A. Macdonald, or even into the 20th century, the West kind of was the poor cousin. I think the core of the problem is that when the West grew up, it wasn't treated as an adult or a partner by Eastern Canada. They continued to be exploited in terms of resources, and I think that their viewpoints tended to be regarded not just that didn't just disagree with Western views, it regarded them with contempt. The line actually is, and it's an old one, is that it's 3,000 miles from Vancouver to Ottawa, but 30,000 miles from Ottawa to Vancouver. And I think the National Energy Program was an enormous example of how the East would treat the West not merely as something to be ripped off, but also something to be despised.
The National Energy Program was a policy brought in by Pierre Elliott Trudeau in 1980, following an election where the Liberals didn't win a single seat in BC, Alberta, or Saskatchewan. The purpose of the NEP was to give Ottawa control over Western Canada's energy industry and to force the West to sell its resources to the East at below market rates. Due to the NEP, unemployment in Alberta increased from 3.7% to 12.4%. The bankruptcy rate increased by 150%, and numerous families were left destitute and facing financial ruin, including famous Saskatchewan-born entrepreneur Brett Wilson.
Do you remember the National Energy Program? Do you remember, were those the kind of the seeds that were sown for what we see today? Or
79, 80, 81, I was up in Edmonton, came to Calgary, bought a house. We had $120,000 into it. We sold it for $72,000 or $73,000. I was effectively bankrupt thanks to the NEP. But many people walked away from their homes. City blocks became the purview of some of the banks. I mean, it was just, it was horrible what was happening here. And there's never been a thoughtful apology or reconsideration.
Far from receiving an apology, while unemployment was reaching near depression levels in Western Canada, Trudeau decided to take a vacation on a luxury rail car through the Rocky Mountains. When he arrived in Salmon Arm, BC, he was met by a few angry Westerners, holding signs reading "Restraint" and "Practice what you preach." Instead of talking with the protesters, Pierre Trudeau looked out his train car window and gave the protesters the middle finger. The famous incident, now known as the Trudeau Salute, sent a clear message to the West. The National Energy Program was here to stay, and Ottawa simply didn't care about how it affected Western industries.
It's easy